Welcome to Been There, Learned That. This is the podcast for leaders devoted to Jesus, their families, and the pursuit of meaningful work. As a life and leadership coach with decades of experience in church, nonprofit, and corporate settings, I am passionate about supporting others. Join me right here every week to gain clarity, confidence, and sustainable strategies to help you break free from behavior patterns that are hindering your leadership. Imagine having authentic energy for your life. It is entirely possible, and it all starts right here. Let's get started. Well, hi there, and welcome back to Been There, Learned That. I'm your host, Dana Byers, and I'm so glad that you're here. This is a podcast where we explore what it means to lead a life of authenticity, purpose, and faith. I'm offering you practical tools and strategies to help you, men and women, thrive in your calling. And with this new year approaching, I think it's the perfect time for us to pause and reflect. This isn't about making resolutions or setting lofty goals that we can't sustain by February, but this episode is about intentional living, about aligning our choices and our actions with God's purpose for our lives. So today we're going to dive into 6 key areas: finances and generosity, family relationships, career, health, spiritual life, and personal development. I'm going to guide you through some questions to help you reflect on the past year and prepare for the year ahead with clarity and purpose. So if you remember last week, I shared with you some exercises I've been personally going through as I prepare for the year ahead, shared some news about what's ahead for me in the year to come. And today I'm going to walk you through a similar exercise, but we're going to go a little bit deeper into some specific areas, because by the end of this episode, you're going to have a framework to ensure that the coming year is intentional, is fulfilling, and is aligned with God's will. So grab a pen, grab your favorite journal, or just take a deep breath, and we will get started. If you're not available to take notes right now as you listen to this, I want you to make note of the things that stand out to you. So when you come back to a time and place that you can write down some notes, that you're able to do that. Don't waste this time. It's really going to be worth it for you. Okay. So first I want to talk about the power of reflection. We love to start with reflection whenever we're coaching because it allows us to learn from the past, make some assessments, gain some understanding from the Holy Spirit, and then take that information and move forward. You know, the Bible says in Psalm 90, verse 12, teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Reflection is really about numbering our days, I think, not in a morbid way, but in a way that reminds us how precious and fleeting our time is. I don't know about you, but there are people who were in my life this time last year who are not in my life today. Time is fleeting. Time is precious. So investing some time to reflect is really going to give us a deeper sense of clarity and purpose as we move forward into the next year. So take a moment to think about this past year. I have 3 simple but powerful questions for you that we started discussing in last week's episode. And question 1 is, what worked well for you this past year? Think about moments or decisions that brought you closer to your goals or that filled you with peace and joy. Maybe you had some special moments with your kids. Maybe you were able to connect to your next door neighbor. Maybe you started a volunteer role that surprisingly worked out great for you. Maybe you switched up your meal prep plan. Whatever it is, take some time and identify the things that worked great for you this year. The second question is to identify what didn't work and be really honest with yourself. Now notice, I didn't say be really critical of yourself. I just said be honest with yourself here, okay? Where did things fall apart or maybe fall off the rails, or what caused you stress or disconnection? I think it's important to point out that sense of disconnection here. It's something we overlook a lot, and it's very important. If you feel disconnected from God or your loved ones or yourself, there's something that's not working there. Not a time to be critical of yourself, but it's a time to get honest. So make note of that. What didn't work? Third question, what would you do differently if you had a chance to start over? So for me, one thing I learned this year was how essential it is to protect my time for spiritual growth and, of course, my family. So my husband and I are empty nesters now. And I think something in my brain was just kind of like, oh, I'm going to use all my free time to grow spiritually. And I'm going to spend so much time in these studies and in the Bible and listening to messages and podcasts. And that just really didn't happen unless I was super intentional. So if I started over again, I would maybe not necessarily schedule it, but make sure that I had some intentional time each week to do that more than I did. And while I did have some wonderful family time, I had to really learn how to engage in that differently since I don't see my kids in person in my home every day. So that's one thing that I'm learning that I could have done differently and I will do better next year. Because sometimes I've just had seasons where I've been overcommitted to one area. In my case, this last year, I had loads of travel within like a 5 or 6 month time period. Chris and I together were in 9 different countries. And then the month of September, we lived in a whole other state on a one-off project. So there were seasons where I was specifically committed to certain areas, and it left me feeling a little bit too stretched as far as consistency in my spiritual growth or time with my family. But I also had some wins, like learning to say no more often and being more intentional about getting some Sabbath rest. That was something that my small group that Chris and I are part of, that we talked about early this year. And that really impacted my entire year about how I want to approach a Sabbath rest. So I'm really thankful for that. So reflection gives us clarity. It helps us see what's working and what's not so that we can adjust and move forward with wisdom. Well, now I want to talk about living intentionally in 6 key areas of your life. Let's take a look, about clarity and focus in these 6 areas because they shape our lives. And for each one of these areas, I'm going to ask you to dream big. What's the absolute best possible outcome? Now, the absolute best possible outcome is not what I think should be your expectation, but I want you to really bring that to mind. And then I'm also going to encourage you as you look at these 6 areas to define the absolute minimum you want to experience or achieve in these areas, okay? Because what this does is this creates parameters for you. You know, if you're looking back on last year and you're saying, well, I didn't spend enough time with my parents. Well, okay, let's look at the year ahead. What would be your ideal? And then maybe what's the absolute minimum you'll do so that you know you can at least hit that absolute minimum and maybe, shoot for the sky and shoot for the moon and land among the stars. We're going to be able to identify those 2 parameters on the spectrum of engagement in these 6 areas so that you feel like you're hitting the mark to some capacity. Are you ready? Okay, let's do this. First area we're going to look at, your finances and generosity. Let's start with your finances and generosity because Matthew 6:21 tells us, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. I have a finance degree. I love looking at investments. I love looking behind the scenes at how businesses run, at how individuals run their own personal finances. But I will tell you, finances aren't just about numbers. They tell a story. Our finances are about our priorities and our trust. So ask yourself, in the year ahead, what's the absolute best possible outcome for our finances? Maybe it's getting out of debt, saving money for a down payment on a home. Maybe you want to increase your giving or your generosity as you move towards becoming radically generous. And then think of the other end of that spectrum. What's the minimum you want to achieve, the minimum progress you're willing to make or that you would be okay with in the year ahead? Perhaps it's starting, a small emergency fund. So if something comes up, it doesn't blow up your budget. Or maybe you're trying to commit to giving somewhere consistently. Generosity is a powerful way to align your finances with your faith. So ask yourself, how can I plan to give intentionally this year? All right, second key area we're going to look at is your family relationships. Let's talk about family. Ask yourself, what is your vision in the year ahead for your family relationships? Now, some of you are high achievers. When I ask you that question, you zone out because you're like, I just can't possibly say what that is. I couldn't put it on paper. You're asking a lot. And I just want to say, don't take this too seriously. And don't take yourself too seriously, by the way, either, please, okay? And I'm saying that with extreme authority because I have to say that to myself a lot as well. If you're taking this too seriously, I get you, but don't do it, all right? What's your vision for family relationships? It could be as simple as playing a board game one night a week, okay? It could be as simple as finding a way to serve together. And really, I think one question that might even outline that more for you, that could be easier for you to answer is, what does thriving look like for your family? You know, depending upon the ages and stages of your kids, some people have told me that thriving means getting their kids in a decent bedtime. You know, some people have said thriving means their kids not being involved in too many activities. Sometimes thriving for a family looks like, you know, sharing meals or attending church together regularly. It could be a variety of things. I don't want to give you too many examples because I don't want to try to plant seeds and you assume those as being goals for you. That's not the purpose here at all. But think about what your vision would be. And then what's one non-negotiable practice that you want to maintain with your family? It could be something you're already doing this year that worked. Maybe you're having family dinners or a weekly devotional. You might be calling your sibling every week or just showing up more consistently. I had one client say he was having a weekly kind of a standing outing, a little date with his daughter to spend time with her, to engage with her and invest with her away from their other kids. And he was doing that for each kid, but he was really seeing it have an impact on his relationship with his daughter. So he absolutely had that as part of his vision or part of what thriving looks like for their family. And remember, one small step can make a big difference here. If you walked away from this episode and thought that you needed to make big sweeping changes, that would be a misunderstanding. I'm just trying to ask you questions to help you revisit the past year you've had, make some tweaks so that you can move forward into the next year with increased intentionality. Okay, the third key area we're going to talk about is your career. I love talking about careers. I want you to ask yourself, what is your dream outcome for your career or leadership role? Now, I'm completely aware when I ask you that it might be beyond this year, right? Some of these things, if you're trying to move up to be an executive in the organization you're in right now and you don't have any direct reports yet, that's probably not going to happen in the next 12 months. But I want you to think down the road, if you have this kind of dream outcome for your career or the leadership role where you'd like to land, but also then step back and say, okay, in the next 12 months, what's feasible for me to move in that direction so I don't get off course? Maybe it's leading your team with greater wisdom or taking a bold step of faith in your work. Maybe it's taking on an assignment or asking to be part of a project that you haven't been invited to yet. And before we engage, the achiever in you too much, I'm going to ask you the other side of this question, and that is, what is the minimum you want to achieve this year in your job, in your role or your ministry? What's the minimum you want to do to feel fulfilled? And I think the question behind the question there is, what's enough? And you've really got to decide that. No one can tell you what's enough. Depending upon what's going on in your personal life or your health or other things right now, enough might just be showing up to work and doing what they've asked you to do. And I completely understand and respect that. I've had years like that myself. But if you're in a season of, growth and investment and development, the minimum you want to experience or achieve this year at work might be a little bit higher. You might say at the very minimum this year, I'm looking for a pay increase. I'm looking to be promoted to the next level, or I'm looking to hire a direct report. Or if you have a business, you're looking to expand into a new area. Whatever that is, identify your dream outcome, but then also the minimum, so that wherever you land 12 months from now, you know that you're somewhere between those 2 points and that you have made progress. And remember, your career is not separate from your faith. As followers of Jesus, we carry the Holy Spirit with us everywhere we go. So even if you're not working for a local church or, a Christ-centered nonprofit, that doesn't really make any difference. You're in ministry. That's my strong belief. So I want to ask you, how can you use the gifts and talents that God has given you to serve Him and the people around you in your everyday job? What would that look like in the next 12 months? All right, the next key area we're going to look at is your health. And this one is very personal to all of us. I'll be honest, a lot of us, including myself, we forget to protect, to value, and to appreciate our health until maybe we suddenly lose it. Anything from when we catch a cold and we feel bad for a whole week, or something worse, some type of diagnosis that's long-term. It's easy for us to let our health take a back seat. So I wanted to be sure to include that in this episode. Ask yourself, what is your ideal state of health physically? And describe that state of health. Here's how you can do that. Ask yourself, what does my typical day look like when I'm physically healthy? Maybe you're drinking a certain amount of water. Maybe you're getting a certain amount of sleep. Maybe you're adjusting the screen time or the exposure you have to technology. I'm really not sure what that is for you. That's what some clients have said to me. But I want you to describe the state of your health on a typically good day when you feel well. What are the activities you're doing? And then the second part of looking at this key area of our health is to identify a baseline habit that you will commit to even on your busy days. Now, side note here, it might be something you're already doing. Maybe you're already doing a 1-minute plank every day. Well, just keep up that commitment if that's what's working for you. Or maybe you're already drinking, so much water every day. Whatever it is, commit to doing something even on the busy days so that you're maintaining that minimum expectation that you've set for yourself. You don't have to burn yourself out to achieve all of the health goals in the next 12 months, but you do want to establish and maintain something that you're committed to support your health even on busy days, because we don't want to just throw it to the wayside when we have a busy day, because you know what happens then? Speaking from experience, if we throw away those habits on a busy day, it turns into a busy season. And suddenly it's been weeks since we've done that habit, no matter how small it is. So those small, consistent actions can help make a big impact over time when you support yourself through your health intentionally in the year ahead. All right, the next of 6 areas that we're going to look at is area number 5, and that's your spiritual life. Here's the questions you can ask yourself. What is the best possible outcome for your walk with God in the next 12 months? Now, we're not putting expectations on God here. We're not trying to raise the bar on ourselves to make ourselves so uncomfortable, but I do want you to try to look at this without completely measuring everything, identifying maybe the habits or the actions that would help you feel close to God. Is it a deeper prayer life? A richer understanding of Scripture? Maybe serving in a new place or in a new way? And then I want to ask you, again, going back to that minimum that we've talked about in the other 4 areas before this, what is the minimum that you want to commit to maintaining in your relationship to stay connected with God? I've heard it said, I'm sure you've heard this too, that if we feel distant from God, He's not really walked away from us, right? We've intentionally or unintentionally stepped away from fellowship with Him when that happens. So identifying the minimum that you're going to maintain to be committed to staying connected to God in relationship with Him, identifying that helps you know how to prioritize your relationship with God even on the busiest days, just like I was saying about your health a few minutes ago. Because if you decide ahead of time how to intentionally engage with God, even if it's a small way every day, that's going to help you build trust in yourself, and you're going to feel supported and be less critical of yourself if things don't go exactly as you hoped they would. So for example, when my kids were little, they were in elementary school. We were in a season where my husband worked remote Monday to Friday in another state. I was working full time. I would get the kids up in the morning, get them ready, make lunches, take them to school, work all day, take them home, make dinner, do the bedtime thing, go to sleep, crash into bed, wake up the next day, rinse, repeat. And it was that way Monday through Friday for, I think, a whole year. And so when this was happening, the minimum I committed to doing during that season was reading a little bit of my Bible every day and just taking a moment, taking a deep breath and asking God, would you guide me today? I need your help. I need your help in raising my kids and serving in ministry at work. I need your wisdom. And I just developed that habit of inviting Him into my everyday when it started and then even when it ended. If it was an evening where my husband happened to be home, we would pray together. And if not, we would get on the phone and pray together. Only took a few minutes, but it became a non-negotiable that really helped me center myself on Christ instead of center myself on myself, or center my life around my problems or the things that were difficult and a struggle. It helped me keep a focus on Him. And I want to invite you to do that, because I think you can do that in any season of your life. Whatever that minimum connection is, commit to it, and you will meet God there. The sixth key area of your life I want to talk about is personal development. And this is one I have noticed in many conversations with leaders that we often let fall to the wayside. So I want to bring it up here for you to think about. Now, this may not be a year where you sense that there's going to be a lot of time, money, energy, you name it, to go towards personal development. Maybe this isn't the year that you get your MBA or whatever. That's fine. But personal development is really identifying some potential areas of growth where you would like to grow, and then moving in that direction, taking intentional steps. So what's your vision for your personal growth? Maybe your leader has told you need to develop in some area, or maybe you're sensing a gap somewhere. I wouldn't say you have to necessarily take your leader's advice unless you completely agree with it, but maybe you want to learn a new skill or just spend more time reading. I've heard people say in conversations that they want to learn how to have a difficult conversation. Someone told me that this year she wants to learn how to receive feedback without taking it personally. What a great personal development goal, right? Someone told me he wants to learn how to understand financial documents better, such as the balance sheets, other things, spreadsheets that he gets all the time that aren't directly necessary for him to look at for the role he's in, but he wants to expand his understanding towards his peers in the workplace where he's at. So sometimes we want to develop, practical skills, and sometimes we want to develop skills that we learn over time that are more relational through practice and support. So what is one small step to keep yourself moving forward in your personal development? Meaning by the end of this next year, what's one thing you would like to improve in doing that you could look back and say, you know what? 12 months ago, I wasn't able to do this as well. And I want to encourage you to keep in mind that growth is not selfish. Your personal development is important, and it's also your responsibility. Probably no one is going to invite you to do that too much, but I want to invite you to look at personal development as stewardship of the gifts and the experiences that God has given you, an opportunity to understand those and to improve in the things that you were doing in your everyday life so that you show up differently and are able to connect with God and honor God in new ways. All right, so now that we have reflected and dreamed on these 6 key areas, I want to pull it all together now, okay? Stay with me. Like I said, if you don't have a notepad and paper with you right now, please do this as soon as you can. It's great when it's fresh in mind to write down these thoughts. But if you're able to right now, I want you to take a few moments. Write down the answers to those questions that we covered today. Or if you already started writing them down, go back and circle, highlight, look at your answers and see which ones stand out to you the most. Because you want to keep it simple and actionable. This is not the time for you to commit to big, massive changes. You're looking for tweaks that you could make that would increase your confidence, your sense of purpose and fulfillment, and maybe even the things that are tweaks that you could make that would actually help you feel more energized about your day-to-day life. And if you're a visual person, I want to encourage you to map all this out, maybe on a whiteboard and take a picture of it at the office, or you could even create a vision board for yourself for the year ahead. And it's also important to point out here that accountability is key. Share these plans with someone you trust. Maybe it's your spouse, a mentor, maybe a coach, or someone in your small group. And don't forget, you don't have to do everything perfectly. I'm always hesitant when I share ideas like this because I know people on the other end are thinking, I want to do this right. And I just want to say to you with all the love in my heart that I can, that God's grace covers our shortcomings. All that's available here to you is an invitation to try, not an expectation to make these changes and do them perfectly. So start with what's manageable. And then you can trust God to guide the rest. Maybe there's one idea that came out of all these questions, and that's your focus for now. And maybe once that will get underway and you'll start seeing momentum, and then you want to come back and try something else. Completely acceptable. So as we close, I want to leave you with this encouragement. Again, living intentionally is not about achieving perfection. It's about walking in alignment with God's will and His purpose for your life. Well, thank you for joining me today on Been There, Learned That. If this episode inspired you, please subscribe to my podcast, share it with a friend, and leave me a 5-star review. This is going to help so many more people find the podcast. I pray that you would have wisdom, clarity, and peace as you prepare for the new year ahead. And until next time, keep leading with faith, purpose, and love.